The Elbing is more or less a brand new premium Tier 8 German light cruiser. And I say more or less because, confusingly, the game has the destroyer icon next to the name of this ship. That's right, it is actually, technically, a destroyer, despite the fact that it's got an absolutely gigantic hull. It's probably about the same size hull as the Tier 5 German cruiser Nuremberg. It's got 30,000 hit points at base. You can get that up to 33,000 if you want to put William Sims on there, which I initially did, although I've changed my build a little bit. More on that in a second. This is actually a clip from the very first game I took the Elbing into, and I knew a thing or two about the Elbing after having seen it on PC before. The thing I knew was that the Elbing had been scientifically designed by the best German engineers to be absolutely lethal to actual cruisers. Case in point, this Buffalo, who is about to turn broadside to us as we run into the map border like true professionals. Wait till he turns broadside, fire these 150mm AP shells, and boom, 12k, 2 citadels, and the guns, well, they reload fairly quickly, kinda slow for a destroyer, honestly, but yeah, there you go. What is that? 6 citadels on that Buffalo, and he is dead. The firepower of the Elbing is not to be underestimated. If you are in a cruiser and you come up against one of these things, do not give it broadside. It can absolutely wreck you. It does not matter if you are a more lightly armored cruiser like the Buffalo. Doesn't matter if you're a more heavily armored cruiser like the Alaska. I've citadeled that as well, although you do have to be a little bit closer to get these AP shells to penetrate a more heavily armored citadel like Alaska's, but Buffalo, absolutely no problem. We're going to do it again here, I think, actually, with this last shell. Yep, there's another citadel. So 7 citadels in this very first game I played in the Elbing. Of course, we do end up getting taken out, which isn't ideal. But now that will allow us to move on to our feature presentation, which I think shows off this ship pretty well. Before we talk about that, though, we should probably talk about how you actually get this ship. It's set to be available soon in an auction, and I wouldn't recommend you bid on it to get it through the auction, because I think the auction is kind of a crappy mechanic, just personally speaking, and I am certainly not going to interact with it, but it's your money, so you can choose how you want to spend it. If the idea of bidding in an auction turns you off, though, as much as it turns me off, then fear not, because the Elbing will debut as a global XP ship sometime in the future. So if you're going to skip the auction like I am, well, you'll be able to buy it sometime later down the line, and it certainly does offer a unique experience. Now, as for the commander I'm using on this ship, it's Eric Bay. And I had to do some changes to my typical Bay build in order to suit this ship, because as you might have guessed, it is all about the guns and all about the AP. Not only does the Elbing have excellent AP in and of itself, with a massive alpha strike for a destroyer in excess of 4k, but it's also got improved AP penetration and improved penetration angles on the AP, and on top of that, it is the most accurate ship in the entire game, with dispersion and sigma better than literally any other ship. The most accurate ship. At the same time, however, while it has these excellent guns, it has an absolutely trash base range on these guns. 10.8 kilometers by sea, which is, in my opinion, almost unworkable, at least the way that I want to play this gun-focused cruiser-like destroyer. This thing is also slow. It's only got a top speed of like 33, 34 knots, and as you can see, it is ginormous, which means it's a huge target, and it only comes with 2 smoke screens, which are the kinda crappy German smoke screens that don't last a very long time. So in order to be as survivable as possible in this ship, I think you need the most range you can get on the guns. And 10.8 kilometers doesn't allow you to get a lot of range without doing a lot of speccing into that range, which is what I've done by putting Rumble on as an inspiration for Bay, as well as the range mod in the 4th mod slot. and then that skill in base third or fourth row, I think the third row of skills, that further increases gun range by 6%, which allows me to get up to 13 kilometers of range on these guns, which is a lot more comfortable. And as you can see, the Elbing is perfectly capable of citadeling the likes of Rune from pretty far away. We take out a battleship there with our torpedoes, and I should probably say something about the Elbing's torpedoes. They are exceptionally slow. They are much like the USS Black's torpedoes. They've only got a speed somewhere in the 50-knot range. It might actually be 49 knots, but low 50-knot range. So they aren't what you could accuse of being fast in any sense of the word at all. They are very slow, and that means they are best suited for plugging up gaps because they do have an exceptionally long range. I think it's around 13 kilometers, so they can travel across the map and plug up any gaps where you think ships might be sailing to. But because they're so slow, they are basically impossible to accurately aim at range. If I wanted to launch them at this Yamato, they'd probably take over a minute to reach him because of how slow they are, and in that minute he could easily move out of their path. So these are the kind of torpedoes that you best just throw out there and forget, which is what we're going to do right now. And those torpedoes are actually going to end up playing dividends, but we're going to forget that we even launched them by the time they hit. Now, you've seen the efficacy of the Elbing's armor piercing. The high explosive is less effective. As a German ship, it's got a low alpha strike. I think I am running that mortar skill, which increases the alpha strike of both high explosive and armor piercing by 10%, and the high explosive alpha with that skill in effect is something like 1800, which given the gun size is pretty poor in destroyer terms, but at the same time, since it's a German destroyer, it does get quarter caliber penetration on its high explosive, which means that the HE is capable of penetrating 32 millimeters of armor, and thus will consistently do damage against most targets, even if it's not a lot of damage. The fire chance, however, is not so great. It's nothing out of line for destroyers. It's an 8% fire chance, but the Elbing has 6 guns, and I've only got the reload down to 6.9 seconds. That's with observant range on Bay. That cuts the reload down. And, well, I'm not running the reload mod because I'm running the range mod. There, by the way, are those torpedoes coming into contact with the enemy Shimakaze. Note that it took 2 of them to take that Shima down. The torpedoes don't necessarily hit very hard, but when they do hit, it can be kind of nice, especially if you've thrown them out there and forgot about it. Anyway, the 8% fire chance on these guns is not super good, so as a consequence, most of the time I think you want to be shooting this armor piercing exclusively, unless you really can't get it to hit the superstructure of an angled ship and do damage. Then maybe switch to the HE, see if you could get a fire, or, potentially if you get a torpedo hit that causes a flood and the enemy damage cons, then you could always switch to the HE to try to light a fire, but the AP is certainly the bread and butter. You can see it here doing pretty good damage against this broadside Alaska. We citadeled him a little bit earlier, and we also saw some salvos a little bit earlier like that against the Yamato that did quite a bit of damage too. Anything broadside to the Elbing's AP is going to get hurt. This AP is the best destroyer in the AP in the game, bar none. That is why I put Anton Gurin as one of the inspirations on this ship, because he increases German AP, or not German, destroyer AP penetration by 7%. I've got him fully maxed. So, for all intents and purposes, the Elbing is a cruiser without a citadel. It does even have cruiser-like armor because the hull is coated in 25 millimeters of armor plating all along the center. Only the bow and stern plating is less than that, which means that the Elbing is perfectly capable of shattering all destroyer-caliber high explosive that doesn't come from other German destroyers on its side armor, which contributes to making it quite tanky. And that's a good thing, because this armor piercing, well, it's not super effective against destroyers, nor is the HE. But the AP, with its improved penetration angles, can be fairly effective against destroyers if they're actually angled. It can get full penetrations on them, which is quite nice. So, as a consequence, if you are going to pick this ship up, you want to be shooting the AP pretty much the entire time. I'll have more on this ship in a later video. I plan to test it out more and hopefully get some more interesting games, and I think there's probably more to be said, but I figured this would be a good first impressions video for you to get an idea of what this ship is all about. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, give it a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.